If you're looking for a comfortable, lightweight gaming mouse with some serious specs, then the Razer Deathadder V3 HyperSpeed or the glorious Series 2 Pro might be some interesting options to consider. These are two roughly similarly priced mice with similar specs and some interesting highlights. The potential for up to 8 kHz polling rate, for example, a decent battery life, and similar comparable weight. The specs on paper are also quite similar, with both mice sporting up to 26,000 DPI and some nifty speeds and other things that I'll leave the full specs of in the description. But in this video, I wanted to compare the two side by side and talk to you about my experiences with them both and what they're like to use. You can see here, for example, that the Series 2 Pro is a little more slimline, sits lower to the desk. The HyperSpeed mouse from Razer instead is a little chunkier and pushes up into the palm, which I personally prefer. You'll see how it fits in the hand a little later on. But both of them are very similar in terms of weight, with the V3 HyperSpeed coming in at around 53 grams and the Series 2 Pro just being 55. So both are incredibly lightweight and perfectly set up for FPS gaming and competitive play. They are, however, slightly different, so it's worth knowing some things. The V3 HyperSpeed, for example, requires an additional dongle, which is an extra purchase to make it up to 8 kHz polling rate, whereas the glorious Series 2 Pro comes with that dongle included in the box as standard. So both in wired and wireless mode, you can use this chunky white dongle that you can see here to give you that full 8 kHz. Now, there are some downsides to this mouse, however. It has this nice looking USB-C charging cable, but it's designed with a notch on it that basically means you can only plug it in one way. This keying is apparently meant to make it so it's harder to pull that cable out by accident and it stays secured. And the cable is also nice enough that it doesn't catch on the desk and doesn't cause you any problems. But when you need to plug it in a hurry, which you will need to do, it just doesn't work. I have found I just lose battery life without warning on this mouse and have to plug it in, which means that you have to unplug the cable from the dongle and plug it into the mouse. And that can be frustrating to not know that's happening. So that's been my experience with it. I've also found that I've plugged this mouse in more often than the Razer, especially when using the decent specs. Now, obviously, if you're using the higher polling rate on both mice, you'll burn through battery life a lot faster, so it is worth noting that. But my experience with the HyperSpeed mouse is that it just lasts longer. The other thing is you'll see this mouse has larger PTFE feet on the underside, and it also has a little dock for the dongle so that you can store it if you want to transport it for any reason and keep it with you. I prefer the HyperSpeed design as well. It has more of an ergonomic shape to it. So it's more of an ergonomic right-handed mouse than the Series 2 Pro, which is symmetrical in design and built for claw or fingertip grips. So they've got quite different styles there. You'll see that the side of the Deathadder HyperSpeed also has these large chunky side buttons on it that are nicely spaced. There's a good gap between them, makes them easy to access and to press when gaming. It also has a sort of matte finish to it, makes it comfortable in the hand, but as you will have noticed, it does pick up some finger oils over time. It also has a very tactile mouse wheel that's comfortable and not too noisy. I'll do a sound test of both mice at the end so that you can hear the difference, but naturally both of these use optical switches and decent optical sensors, giving you an accurate response and satisfying actuation from the buttons as well. You'll see that the Razer mouse has an indicator on top to let you know what DPI level you're on, so you can press the button and switch between those. Weirdly though, that button for switching is on the underside. That indicator does let you know when your battery's running low as well though. The glorious Series 2 Pro has a similar sort of logic but reversed, so the button is on top and then the indicator is on the underside, and obviously the colour of the indicator on both these mice let you know which level you're on. You can see that in the software. Switch between default settings. And you can tweak them all the way up to 26,000 DPI, but they have more reasonable and logical DPI levels set as standard. Now, the one thing that you won't notice, and I barely have seen, is that there's also an indicator between the two mouse buttons behind the DPI level button on top, which is basically a light letting you know how much charge you've got. And I've never noticed it during the whole time I've used it because it's usually hidden by your hand. So it's not very handy in letting you know when you're running low, so you just suddenly run out of battery life without any warning. Not to say that Razer's indicator at the front is that obvious, but the one between the two buttons isn't very helpful either. The side buttons are also slicker than they are on the Razer mouse, not as easy to access, and as you can see it sits a lot lower on the desk, which I don't find as comfortable. Now in the glorious software you can customize the levels and tweak things in here. You'll see that you can choose polling rate for wireless and wired modes separately, and this is worth considering because if you use the 8000 Hz polling rate you'll burn through the battery life really quickly in wireless mode, so maybe stick to the higher polling rate when plugged in, or you can obviously just change between them on a whim, whichever you want to do. Obviously you can choose different DPI levels here with the indicator to let you know what level you're on, and you can rebind the buttons in the software as well. You can do similar things in Synapse, although it's worth noting, as I've said, that as default the Series 2 Pro gives you 8 kHz polling rate as an option, whereas Razer's mouse would require an upgrade in order to do. In terms of gaming performance, I've found both of these mice to be satisfying and responsive with good actuation and obviously slick enough feet and light enough design that you can easily flick them around for quick shots onto target. Won't necessarily make you a pro though, and it is worth noting that the Series Pro 2 has better specs on paper with a higher IPS and max acceleration as well, potentially making it slicker and faster and more agile than the Razer HyperSpeed. However, what I want to note is my experience with the HyperSpeed is a little bit better. It's nicer to use, it's more comfortable, the battery life lasts longer, and there are some other highlights. So I showed this in the full review, which I'd recommend checking out, and I'll link to both reviews in the description. But with the HyperSpeed mouse, it has some intelligence in the software where it basically has a dynamic sensitivity which responds. So when you start to flick the mouse, it automatically increases the sensitivity so that you can easily spin around really quickly. And this is obviously without having to adjust your DPI levels on the fly and quickly switch between them. You can basically just spin, do a 180 really quickly, and then tap out some shots on an enemy that might be approaching you. I found this was particularly useful and has made it one of my favourite mice of late. Considering that both of these are a similar price, I prefer the HyperSpeed on paper for what it does and what it was like to play with. But obviously if you want to push to the higher end of the specs of the 8 kHz, you're going to need to upgrade it. Now stick around for a sound test to hear the difference between the switches, and don't forget to check out the reviews in the description, and thanks for watching. You've made it right to the end of the video, you brilliant legend you. If you've enjoyed it, click that subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, and drop me a comment down below if you've got any questions. If you really enjoyed it, consider joining the channel and see the benefits of doing so. Check out these other videos, you might well find them interesting or useful, and most importantly, have a great life.